Please don't adjust that dial. You are on with Kicking Ideas. My name is Rob, and this is a bilingual podcast slash YouTube channel slash Facebook group. And we make content in Portuguese and in English. And tonight I have a really special guest. It's Michiko Hoshi, and she is a bilingual Brazilian who I am going to bring on the show. So please listen to the rest of this podcast or watch the rest of this video, and like and subscribe if you want to get more content like this. Without further ado, I'm going to admit her right now. Hello, how are you?
Tá bom?
You look fine.
Ok.
Look better than me.
Eu tô morrendo de fome. Eu vou comer um chocolate enquanto a gente vai conversar.
Okay, just a second. Let me stop the recording. Us. She says we can watch her eat chocolate, so let's watch her eat chocolate.
Você gosta de chocolate, Roberto?
I do. I'm a chocoholic. Have you ever heard that term, chocoholic?
Nunca tinha ouvido, mas eu sou. Então só vou usar isso agora. Chocoholic.
Yeah, I'm a chocoholic because I had my chocolate today. Actually, I was just eating chocolate just a moment ago. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's no more chocolate in the world, I would be a very sad person. That's for sure. Yeah. So you were working today? Yeah?
Yeah. Explica as regras, como que vai funcionar aqui o nosso
Okay, so on this podcast, we try to have Brazilians or Portuguese speaking people speak in Portuguese, and on my side, because I'm an American, my native language is English, I will speak in English. And when we have to explain some kind of word or something, we explain it in the language that we need to explain it. So if there's a word that you say that I don't understand, I will maybe ask you to explain it in English the best you can. And the same goes if I say something that you don't quite understand, you say, what's that word? Then I will explain that word in Portuguese, and that's what we usually do. So,
Okay, perfect.
First of all, I'm a huge admirer of your work and your ethic for posting. You post so much and more than I do, and I want to be on that level. I just want to know, like, how do you push yourself to post that much every day? It has to be hard because I've tried, but I just can't. What's your
Realmente não é fácil. Eu comecei há pouco tempo, na verdade, tem mais ou menos um ano e pouco. Foi quando eu comecei a trabalhar com a intercâmbio para a Austrália. Que eu comecei a postar mais. E por que que eu me obrigo, por que que eu me forço a sempre estar todo dia postando alguma coisa, ou produzindo algum conteúdo, alguma coisa do tipo assim? Por uma série de razões. Primeiro, eu estou construindo o meu posicionamento digital na internet, entendeu? Então, assim, a gente sabe que na internet as pessoas estão sendo o tempo todo bombardeadas por informações. Todo mundo está postando o tempo todo, entendeu? E se você não posta, se você não se compromete a criar esse conteúdo, a estar ali presente o tempo todo para a sua audiência,
somebody else will, right? Somebody else will.
Exatamente.
And so, yeah, I need to get more on that. I guess my thing is I'm old, but that shouldn't be an excuse. You know, it's so hard for me because, like, I come from an analog age, you know, where we used to have like videotape, and you had to like conserve your battery. You had to make sure you had enough videotape in the camera, and you know you could do it, but it took so long to edit and things, and I just have this mental block when it comes to producing content. It's like, oh, what, if I made a mistake, what you know, I just need to not think that way. I guess that's the way that it'll improve. And I also worry about like how I speak. You know, I'm like, oh, if I say an or an you know, and then I feel like I messed up the whole thing, and I'll start over, and then I'll start over again. Is there anything that you do? First of all, I don't want to digress too much. I want to stay focused on, you told me that I need to be on YouTube. Kicking Ideas needs to have a YouTube presence, more than a Facebook presence, or more than a maybe an Instagram presence, or even a podcast presence. You say YouTube is the key. Why do you say that?
Primeiro, eu queria só fazer uma ressalva que essa questão que você falou, né, do mental block, né, do bloqueio mental, então de ficar se preocupando excessivamente, né, com o modo como você fala, essas coisas assim, isso é totalmente normal, eu também tenho isso. Se você for assistir, por exemplo, eu tenho um vídeo que eu postei, que é o vídeo do Ano Novo, eu gravei aquele vídeo 50 vezes, e eu, tipo assim, né, esse vídeo que saiu, a minha energia, ela já tá muito baixa de tão cansada que eu tava, porque eu tava gravando, eu não ficava satisfeita, e eu parava, e eu excluía, e eu voltava, e eu parava, excluía, eu voltava. Eu tava quase assim, desistindo, só que eu só gravei porque eu me comprometi aquele dia, não, eu preciso gravar alguma coisa, entendeu? Então, só por causa disso. E aí chegou uma hora que eu falei assim, não, vai desse jeito mesmo, e tipo, foi. Mas assim, eu não tava nem um pouco a fim de gravar naquele dia, e eu não, tipo, eu senti que eu não tava satisfeita com nada, só que aí que tá, é aquela questão do compromisso. Se a gente não faz esse compromisso com nós mesmos, porque não é um trabalho, é uma coisa que a gente quer atingir, né? A gente quer começar a criar e tudo mais, mas não tem aquela super obrigação. Ou você cria essa obrigação por você, ou simplesmente ela vai. Então, é o tempo todo, eu também tenho isso. É um trabalho mental, é um trabalho, né, de comprometimento com você mesmo, de esforço. É totalmente normal, mas continua, vai na fé que...
No, as I said, I really love some of your content is so useful. Like, I was really thinking about doing, because I'm a cyclist. I don't know if you know about this about me, but I'm a cyclist. And I was thinking, man, if I could find a way to make money cycling, that would be the best thing ever. And then you did this thing on Uber Eats, and I was like, oh, that's so helpful. And that made me go, and I actually investigated. I didn't actually do it, but I investigated it, and I thought that your content was so inspirational on that part. So I'm really thankful for that. And then you've done other things that I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know these things. And you are very detailed in what you explain. And I think that you help the community over here in Japan, as far as the Brazilian community, help them out with a lot of stuff that they would like to know about, but they're too afraid to do something about. And I'm just questioned, how well do you speak Japanese?
Eu converso o suficiente para... Eu consigo manter uma conversa. Eu diria que... eu tenho um N2.
Okay,
Nível
you got an N2. Okay. So for those that don't understand an N2, it's like it's basically means that she has complete conversational ability, and there might be some things that you don't read very well, or something that you don't write very well. And then if there's a really kind of, we call it technical jargon, which would be like a technical word, or perhaps in Japanese, we have what do we call the keigo or the sonkeigo, which is the honorifics of the language. Those are the parts that would be difficult for you. And then, of course, maybe the high level stuff relating to some area of expertise.
Exatamente.
Day to day, you've got a pretty good ability with that. So
Exatamente.
that makes sense. And I would understand that an N2 would be enough to, to investigate enough to be able to talk about it with some degree of authority on that. So that's interesting to know as well. And then you speak English, which is really great. I know you're speaking in Portuguese now, and someday we'll probably have to do an interview with you, a whole 100% in English. But right now, because it's Kicking Ideas, and that's the way we kind of work with it, is a bilingual podcast. I'm really thankful that you're speaking your best Portuguese with us today, and I'm just really happy to have this interview. So. Yeah.
Eu tô adorando isso daqui também. Para mim é um pouco difícil às vezes, porque eu quero ir responder em inglês, mas eu fico me segurando para... Não, calma aí, é em português, essa é a ideia, né?
You're doing better than Yuri. I'm telling you right now. Yuri, he fails every time he speaks in English when he is supposed to be speaking in Portuguese. It's always been easy for me because I'm really disciplined in that part. Like because I'm an English teacher, when I have to go and teach English classes, sometimes they ask me, don't speak any Japanese, or they say, don't speak any Portuguese. And I go in and I just bang it out and I don't speak one word of it. Like I might, there's two things I say, like, I don't speak Portuguese in the class, but I might translate one word if somebody is like just not getting it. But that's about it. And that's what I'll do in Kicking Ideas as well. I will translate maybe one word or something like that.
Legal, essa ideia é muito bacana. Respondendo, voltando ao assunto do YouTube, por que eu falei para você que você precisa ir para o YouTube? Porque, veja só, a plataforma da internet, ela existe, o consumo de cada plataforma, ela é diferente, certo? Então, por exemplo, assim, eu não sei se você tem Instagram, Roberto?
I have a great Instagram. I mean, well, for me, it's great. I got 1,000 people. So I'm like, yeah, I've got 1,000 people on Instagram. So it's taken me forever. And I do only English teaching content. And then my stories are mountain bike stuff. So yeah, people can watch my stories because I post in Reels because I like Reels. I used to do TikTok. I really like TikTok as a platform, but then yeah, I repost a lot of TikTok onto my Instagram. So like if they're a good creator on TikTok, then I post them on my Instagram for people that are interested in learning English. So on that's Rob English Now, which is like, this is my philosophy. You shouldn't pay a dime for learning English. I'm sorry if that destroys somebody else's business model, but like my idea is you should be able to learn any language you want for free because the internet. I mean, like, you know, I know a lot of people, it's helpful for them to have a teacher because they are not disciplined to do it. It's like having a coach when you're like trying to do mountain bike, for example. I would be a much better mountain biker if I had a coach. But since I can't afford a coach, then I have to have my own personal, you know, training programs. I have to do my own personal study on how to train, and that makes me go slower. If I want to go faster, then you hire a teacher. In that case, it's a teacher's really helpful.
Eu gravei um vídeo falando justamente sobre isso. Ele não foi ao ar ainda, ele vai ser editado ainda, né? Mas falando justamente isso, porque as pessoas, elas me perguntam, Michiko, como que você aprendeu japonês? Como que você aprendeu inglês? Isso, aquilo. E eu falo para a pessoa, eu falo assim, vocês têm que parar de se iludir achando que porque vai pagar professor e estudar uma vez por semana, você vai aprender alguma coisa. Meu filho, a internet está aí. Se você não tem a capacidade de estudar, de aprender com o que você tem, não adianta se iludir pagando alguém para te ensinar. Primeiro estude o que você tem de graça e aí, a partir disso, que você precisar, você paga alguém para te assessorar, para ensinar, para, né, cobrir essas lacunas. Mas agora, se a pessoa ela não se coloca no meio, se ela não se desafia a ir falar, porque língua a gente aprende assim, não é? Você
that is it. Yeah, I mean, and the other point that I would add to that is like, you have so many content creators in Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I don't really like YouTube English teachers. I've seen a lot of them. They've all been garbage to me. But I mean, it's just because I haven't found the right one. But I've found some of the TikTokers are the best. Like I learned so much from the TikTokers. Like when it went really viral last year or the last 2 years, I was watching them and I was just like, wow, these guys are really on point. And I learned so much from the TikTokers. And then I, even as a teacher, I've been teaching for 20 years and I was like, oh, wow, this one lady, she was so cute. Like she was just an old grandma and she's like, come on and like, let's learn English together. And I just thought she was so wonderful. I shared a lot of her content last year. And yeah, I have just really found that if you want to just rob English, you can just rob it from the internet. It's just there, it's ready to be learned. And I noticed that children, like young children, it's not even a thing for them. I've met children that are like 7 or 8 years old, completely fluent in English, and the only thing they do is watch YouTube videos. And it's they just do it. And so like I think that this old-fashioned way that you got to have a teacher and you've got to have a class and you've got to have you know, you've got to get a certification to be able to do it. That's an old, antiquated idea that actually is so much of a problem for most people. Like an
Exatamente.
obstacle. "I'd love to learn English," but they don't do anything. It's like, "I'd love to lose weight." They don't do anything. And it's just like, I don't know if you know this, but I was really fat. I was like 100 and I think I was about 120 kilograms at my highest, like heaviest.
Wow.
Yeah, that's almost 300 pounds. I was huge fat, and I lost all that weight. You know, just really dropped down the weight, and I was really, you know, it was such a fast process actually. But the reason why is because I just said, no, I'm going to stop eating garbage, you know, and I would just eat like, I would go to the convenience store and I would get a whole bunch of ice cream sandwiches that were like $2 or $3, and I would just eat them all. That's what I would do. And I wouldn't exercise. So I'd just go teach, and then I'd come home and like teach and come home and teach and come home. And that was it. And I gained so much weight. But like one day I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm way overweight, and my whole body hurts, my back hurts, my neck hurts. You know, I just couldn't, I didn't feel healthy at all. And I just, no, I'm just going to go for it. And I decided to lose the weight, and I lost all of it down. My lowest point, I was at 74 kilograms. And that was like, it only took me about a year and a half to lose all of that weight. So yeah, it's just a matter of acting on what you want to do and taking charge of your life. So that, I love that, you know, the way that you talked about learning languages, and just like you said, no, people, you just have to do it. You know, so it's all right there. Mm-hmm.
Exatamente. Porque eu mesma, ô, Roberto, nunca paguei uma aula de inglês. E nem de
Awesome.
japonês. Nada,
Awesome.
nada. Porque eu acredito que a gente aprende no campo de batalha, se colocando na situação, entendeu?
That's
É
right.
exatamente o que você falou, agindo, né? Então, se você não fizer isso, se você não tem a mentalidade de fazer isso, não adianta você se iludir achando que porque você vai pagar para ir uma vez na semana, estudar 1 hora na semana, você vai conseguir aprender alguma coisa. Eu trabalhava com intercâmbio para a Austrália, né, Roberto? Quantos alunos não vieram para mim falando que estudavam inglês há 9, 10 anos, só que não tinha o suficiente ainda e queria fazer um intercâmbio? Vê se pode, não é?
Well, see, for me, it's crazy, but like, I mean, like, I guess I'm kind of, I guess the Portuguese word would be like, well, there's a word in Spanish, and I don't know if it has the same meaning. I say like, I'm atrevido. In Spanish, I would say I'm atrevido. They have the same word in Portuguese, right? So like in English, we don't really have a word for that, but it's like, I guess the best thing would say is like, I just, I'm shameless in a way, because like, I don't care if the job says, for example, do you need Japanese, right? And I would just go up and say, yeah, I speak Japanese. And they would say, oh, can we speak to you a little bit? And I'd say like, this is what I can do. And then they might say, well, can you translate this document? And I'd say, yeah, sure. And then I'd go home and I would just study and like translate it the best I could. And then I turn it in, and usually it's enough. So that like the point of it is like, wow, I don't actually have any certifications or anything in Japanese, but like people will ask me to do translations for them, and I will do them, and then I'll just turn it in. And if it's good enough, then it's good enough. And if it's not good enough, then, you know, they won't ask me to do it again. But with Portuguese, it was interesting because I went to, I was teaching a volunteer English class, and these 2 Brazilian girls showed up. And at the time, I didn't speak Portuguese, I spoke Spanish. And these 2 Brazilian girls showed up in the class, and they were like, oh, you should go and teach at our school. And so I was like, oh, there's a Brazilian school? And they're like, yeah, you should go teach there. And I was like, all right. So I just showed up like the next day. I was like, these 2 girls, they asked me to come here because they thought I'd be a good teacher at your school. And it just so happened they're like, oh yeah, we are hiring. So, you know, we'd like you to interview. So I interviewed with the director, and it's so funny because he did his university in the United States. And so he was all jazzed about having a native English speaker as the English teacher. And then he was like, "Do you speak Spanish too?" "Yeah, yeah." And then he was like, "Oh, wait a minute. Do you speak Portuguese?" And all I said was "sim," like just like with the M on the end of it, you know, it's just basically that was part of it. And he's like, "Oh, great." So then he's like, "Good." And then like I went home, and then the next day he said, "Come back in, and we'll talk to the coordinators and stuff, and then we'll have you come in." And I went in, and he's like, "Yeah, we've decided to give you the homeroom of the 4th grade." And I was like, "Okay, 4th grade homeroom." And he's like, "Can you teach history, geography, math, and what was the other one? And art?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that." And he hands me books. Yeah, he hands me all these books. I took the books home, and it was a couple months before the classes were supposed to start, and I literally read all of the books, translated all the words, and just read every single page of all of those manuals. And then I went back. But the thing is, like, I knew it when I read it, I knew it when I said it, but I didn't know how to pronounce anything. So I was like there, and like one of the kids was like, "You don't pronounce it like that." He's like, "You pronounce it like this." And I was like, "Okay, thank you." But it was wonderful because actually the students learned so much better because I was so jazzed about what we were studying. You know, it was like, okay, so there was this guy, his name was Pedro Vastacamino, and he like did this thing, and I was like, "What, really?" And I was like, yeah, this was like all about it. It's like, you know, so I was so excited because I was learning Brazilian history at the same time. And then they were so jazzed about it because like they were teaching me things. They're like, "Did you know this teacher? Did you know this teacher?" And I was like, no, but let's look it up and make sure that it's true. And so I taught them to use the internet, because I said, like, well, I don't know anything about Brazilian history, so let's get out Wikipedia and let's look at that. And then it was like, wait a minute, let's look at is there any more information in English? And then like, wow, there's like 10 more pages in English. I said, like, yeah, and this is Brazilian history. And there's actually more pages on it in English than there are in Portuguese. And they're like, wow, hey, and there's another page in Spanish. And then like, oh, I can kind of read Spanish. And they were like really happy about it. And so it was a wonderful experience for me, and I think for them. They just graduated this year, so it was from high school. So it was a really good opportunity for me. I went to their graduation. I didn't get to go to the ceremony because they had closed it for anybody that wasn't a family member. But I waited for them to get out, and then I talked to them afterwards. But it was a wonderful experience.
Pelo que você fala, assim, pelo que você conta, você ama a lecture, né? Tipo, a ensinar, né? Tipo, essa profissão de professor.
Love to teach. Yeah, I love to teach. Yeah, it's my favorite thing to do because it's like when you're helping somebody learn something, that's like an amazing, time. So the one thing that I particularly love about it is that you're helping somebody change their life for the better, and you're influencing them in a good way. And what I've always tried to do is I have my politics, but I really try, like when I'm teaching at school, to like present both sides of the arguments really as fair as possible. And that's one of the other things we try to do in taking ideas. So a lot of times people want to know my politics, what they really are. And it's so funny because like I try to learn the both sides of the political argument so well that like you can't really know where my politics are. And it's really funny because like I think most people think I'm libertarian, and I actually probably sound like I'm libertarian, but I was for ages, I was a communist. And I still kind of like, I've got the beard, I've got the hair, of a communist. So like, I still wear the hats and stuff, but people would say, well, how can you be a communist? And it's like, because you talk so much about liberty and all these things. I say, yeah, but like, that's the way I understand communism. That's the way I understand communism to be. But what gets pushed onto the people is totally not communism. It's totally not socialism. It's totally not what I believe it to be. So I read Marx and I understand what he said. We're nowhere near what he wants to do, what he wanted to do. We're so far away from what Marx wanted to do. And Marx, even himself, I think he was thinking that this is not going to happen in the next 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years. He's thinking like 200 years in the future, 300 years in the future is what he's thinking. When we have everything available because of technology. And he said that it would come through capitalism. So right now, everybody needs to be a capitalist. That's, if you're a real Marxist, everything needs to be capitalism, but it needs to be, with through that we're going to get to a place where we're not going to need to have greed and all of these things that Marx was against. And so that's the main thing, the way that I read it, and after reading a lot and studying a lot about it. But that's one thing that is, people really have a hard time understanding me, because I'm like, no, we have to have capitalism now, because that's the only way that we're going to get to a place where we don't need it anymore. So, does that make sense?
É porque eu sou uma ignorante política, tipo, mas eu gosto muito de aprender. Eu gosto muito, assim, de ouvir, né, várias vertentes e tudo mais. Mas, assim, o que você faz hoje aqui na internet, por exemplo, é uma forma de você disseminar o que você acredita?
It's not about what I believe is totally kind of, I think is irrelevant, but what is more important is, if I'm going to be honest in what I understand the facts to be, you see, because like a lot of stuff is pushed. It's like so much is meant to demonize one side or demonize another side or drag somebody down, or, it's not really set up in a way that is like productive, where it's going to actually do some good for people. Because it doesn't matter if my politics are communist or my politics are socialist, or my politics are extreme right or extreme left. What really matters is, do I help people? You know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing I absolutely love about you, is that you're always just doing stuff that would just help somebody, be better, and that's my ideology as well. I just want to help other people and help them be better. And so right now, all of the politics, it doesn't matter who's president, it doesn't matter who the prime minister is. Like, do Japanese people even know? It's like who the prime minister of their country is. They know who the president of the United States is. They have no idea who the who the prime minister is, or they don't even care. And it's like, oh yeah, I never have Japanese people telling me, oh yeah, the country's going to go into the, it's going terrible because of the prime minister. They all know that they have to do their job and make their own way forward. So, I think that's where I'm at with it as well. So yeah.
Nossa, essa é a coisa, a verdade, maior verdade que eu vi, acho que nos últimos anos. E eu nunca tinha me tocado disso, porque eu sempre falo, isso daí é uma coisa que está sempre nos meus discursos também. Não adianta você ficar reclamando do Japão, do sistema, do Brasil, das pessoas, da fábrica, do chefe, do colega. Não adianta você reclamar de tudo isso que está ao seu redor se você não faz o que você precisa fazer. Se você não vai lá e não estuda, não cumpre com as suas obrigações, se você não se desenvolve, né? E seja intelectualmente, espiritualmente, o que quer que seja. E isso que você falou, eu nunca tinha percebido. Realmente, os japoneses, eles não estão nem aí. Eles não ficam perdendo tempo da vida deles se preocupando com o que está acontecendo lá ao redor do mundo, ou, né, tipo, o que quer que seja, ou até mesmo nessa questão política. Mas eles fazem o que está, tipo, o trabalho deles, o que está ao alcance deles, o que eles precisam fazer aqui para tudo girar.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I think this is the thing that I'm a big fan of this ideology. And there's a guy, his name is Jason Stapleton. He has a podcast that's really cool. I think you should check it out. It's called Wealth, Power, and Influence. We can put it in the show notes later. But he tries to be apolitical. He's a libertarian, I think, or an objectivist or something like that. But he doesn't even care about that. He's like, that's not the point. The point is, how can you be productive for the rest of society? Because right now in this stage of capitalism, the way to become rich through capitalism is to help other people get what they need, right? I mean, that's the main thing. People are complaining about capitalists, but they're the only ones out there producing something that people need, and that's why they become rich. And at a certain point, we're not going to need them anymore. That's what's going to happen. Eventually, that's it. But every time we try to do it an unnatural way by using like force, trying to force things to happen, it slows it down. So the way I look at it is that the long term is you have to let this thing. There is greed, there is an inequality, and it's going to be part of the system until it works its way out. But that is right now what you need to do is produce value in your sphere to help those people who need it the most to get the most out of it. And if that is teaching a class, if that is going to the factory and building the things that we all need to survive, there's absolutely nothing wrong with working in the factories. Which one thing is it's so sad that when I worked in the schools, a lot of the school teachers would say, if you don't get study, you're going to end up working in the factory. And it's like in the Brazilian school, all of the students, parents work in the
going to the factory. Yeah.
Their parents. What are you saying to these children that their parents are dumb and they did? A lot of the parents did study. A lot of the parents did go to university, but it just made more sense to go work in a factory right now and get that salary that they're getting to give their children a better chance. And here's the other thing is like, so what? It's the honest work that you do in the factory. That there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, especially if you're using it to give yourself a push forward. You're trying to help yourself get a better situation in the future. So I always look at that as if you don't want to be there, then we should help you to get out. But if that's what you want to do and that's your way forward, then let's let that be that, and let that honest work be honest, because there's nothing more honest than actually producing something that everybody needs.
Exato.
Yeah.
Exatamente. Voltando rapidinho somente ao assunto do YouTube, por que eu falei para você ir para o YouTube? É porque justamente esse conteúdo que você produz agora, ele é um conteúdo extenso e denso.
Right.
Certo? Não é um conteúdo de fácil digestão e de rápida digestão, que, tipo assim, ele fica bem no Instagram. Não, ele não fica bem no Instagram, se você subir nele, porque o público do Instagram não consome ele, e o público do Facebook não é que não seja um público qualificado, mas, assim, não é um tipo de vídeo que eles consomem. Porque o Facebook é basicamente a mesma coisa que o Instagram. Eles querem coisas rápidas, passar feed, né? E acompanhar a página, sei lá. Mas agora no YouTube, não. No YouTube, ali estão os vídeos compridos, ali onde a pessoa ela vai buscar algum assunto mais denso, entendeu? Vai querer saber de alguma, vai querer aprender, vai querer estudar alguma coisa também, entendeu? Então, assim, se fosse... O que dá para fazer para chamar a atenção, captar pessoas, é você tirar partes desse vídeo comprido e jogar no Instagram, jogar no YouTube, para chamar, entendeu? Mas direcionar a pessoa para ir assistir lá no YouTube. E o YouTube, ele tem uma entregabilidade muito, muito alta, Roberto, muito alta. Então, assim, o crescimento... 2 meses atrás, eu não tinha 1.000 inscritos no meu canal. Agora eu tô com quase 5.000 inscritos.
Wow.
É muito rápido, entendeu? A entrega.
Fast, because it took me, I'm just about 5,000 Facebook friends, which is, that has taken me a long time to build, and I've really worked on it. I think I've been on Facebook since 2008, and I'm just barely getting to the 5,000 friends mark. And so that was always kind of a goal. At a certain point, I decided, well, let's see how far I can go with this. And I'm not accepting every request either. I'm looking, is this a real person? Is this something kind of thing? So I'm checking on that as well. And yeah, there's probably some that have skipped in and got a friend request, or send me a friend request that that are not actual people or don't have accounts anymore. So I'm aware of that. But on Instagram, I've been doing that since 2015. So or 2014 or 2015, one of the two, around that time when I started my Instagram account, and I made it specifically to be just English. Just like, I'm going to teach English here. I'm not going to I'm not going to follow very many people. I'm just going to keep putting my stuff out. And interesting enough, I don't use hashtags, which is again like that's like the horrible thing you should never do. You should always use hashtags. But I'm not even using hashtags. I'm still getting up to about 1,000 such things. So I think that's just like as organic as you can possibly be with the creation on that. But yeah, I did use hashtags for a while. It didn't really give a bump, and then I just noticed it's just a very slow growth process for me. But it's good because I do get a lot of likes once with everything I put up. So with Instagram, I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, it can always grow, right? So that's the thing. And one thing that I'm going to do, and I promise you this, I'm going to actually put my content on YouTube. And thank you so much for giving me that idea. And something I just put off for so many years. I was like, oh, I heard a lot of bad things about YouTube, people being demonetized, people being kicked off or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? That's just silly excuses, right? That's just excuses. I'm inventing those excuses.
O que você tem a perder em colocar no YouTube?
Absolutely nothing.
Não é?
That's right.
Não é? Então, assim, se você
it.
fosse perder alguma coisa, ainda vai. Mas agora, não tem o que perder. Por que não tentar, certo?
Right. So about how often do you post on YouTube? What, like, are you posting every day?
Como eu comecei? Eu comecei acho que em outubro do ano passado. Então faz 2 meses, vai fazer 3 meses, né? E até então eu postava, eu me obrigava e eu tinha muita dificuldade de conseguir produzir conteúdo consistentemente. Então quando eu comecei, eu me obrigava pelo menos uma vez na semana tentar gravar alguma coisa e postar. Mas eu falhava, às vezes, sei lá, demorava umas 2, 3 semanas, sabe, para poder postar. Só que aí, de repente, ele começou a crescer e começou a entregar. E mais pessoas começaram a vir e começaram a comentar e começaram a engajar, as pessoas começaram a ver. E agora, esse ano, eu decidi que pelo menos, no mínimo 2 vezes na semana eu vou começar a subir vídeo. Então, toda segunda e toda quinta-feira eu vou começar a subir, porque o YouTube já começou a me monetizar.
There you go. Nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Nothing to lose, exatamente.
So yeah, that's another thing.
E eu tava pensando nisso hoje, sabe, Roberto? Cara, é que eu, né, com a minha vida correndo, tantas coisas acontecendo, eu tinha me esquecido disso. Mas eu trago muito a questão da fase que eu trabalhava nas fábricas, né? Muito dessa experiência e tudo mais, sempre incentivando as pessoas a quererem mais, buscarem mais e tudo mais. E eu tava lembrando que quando eu comecei com esse processo de querer sair de fábrica, o que eu queria era compartilhar minha história com as pessoas para incentivar elas e inspirar elas também, entendeu? Só que isso se perdeu ao longo, né, dessa minha trajetória, depois que eu saí, comecei a trabalhar com outras coisas, a me esforçar, né, aprender coisas novas e tudo mais, eu acabei esquecendo isso daí. Mas agora que eu estou percebendo que, no fundo, é isso que eu estou fazendo. Vem pessoas que deixam comentário assim para mim, porque ao mesmo tempo que você assiste meus vídeos, você vê que eu sou muito ousada, muito atrevida.
Yeah, that's the word. Ousada. Yeah,
ousada.
Right. So we have I think it's bold, right? In English, you're bold, right? You just go for it, right?
Yeah,
actually, I really, really appreciate that in your videos.
Então, só que
you're lifting weights now. Tell me about that. Like, you're lifting weights, you're doing some...
agora eu começo... Então, é um conjunto de tudo. Você começa a ficar bem, você quer se cuidar, você tá aparecendo na câmera, é um conjunto de tudo, né? Que vai trabalhando a sua autoestima. Mas aí, ao mesmo tempo que vem as pessoas, né, me elogiarem e tudo mais, que gostam, tem também as pessoas que se ofendem. Tem também tem as pessoas que...
I remember the first time that happened to me, that somebody was like trolling me, right? I remember Yudi and I were like on our 10th podcast or something, and it was about get rich quick schemes. And we were talking, and some guy just said something. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it's something like look at these two losers talk about something like that. And I was just like, whoa, like, oh, you just tried to hurt me just for no reason. I was like, wow. Man, that was
O que que
crazy.
você sentiu a
No,
primeira vez?
I felt so like hurt. It was like so painful at the same, but it was at the same time, it was like, oh, then I thought, I was like, oh, I must be saying something right if somebody is attacking me. You know what I mean?
Exato,
Right.
exatamente.
But at the first time, it was like, oh gosh, why did you punch me? Why did you hurt me? Like I'm only here to help you. You know what I mean? And also, it's like we talk about this all the time. So we at Kicking Ideas do not claim to know anything. We just claim to try to present the arguments in the best light that we can, and at the same time, we are not here to give you advice on anything. We're just trying to give a bilingual conversation that's interesting, that is in the norm, that people are, you know, talking about, that people are interested in, and then present it in two languages so that people who are either Spanish speakers, right, Spanish speakers living in the United States that would like to learn Portuguese, that's one of our main targets, and the other one is Brazilian people living in Japan that need English, because your life is better in Japan if you speak English as a Brazilian. That's just categorically, it's just better for you. And then, of course, people in Brazil that are interested in Japan and interested in learning English. That, of course, but we also have so many people that all over the world. When we looked at our analytics, it was like Spain, and it was like, you know, France, and like just all these different countries, African countries, and we're like, oh, whoa, you know, that was like
Que
amazing.
legal.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So, you know, those are things that you know, have been inspirational for me, and you know, as I was saying though, it's interesting because like with platforms, have you ever heard of Spoon?
Já ouvi falar, sim.
Yeah, so like my daughter has a Spoon account, and she is like killing it. She's like got thousands of followers and stuff, and I was just like, what? Yeah, she makes way more. Like they like send her like, I guess, stars or something like that, like Facebook stars. They're sending her a bunch of those. So she just like, oh yeah, I just made $800 for one podcast. I was like, oh, what? And it's like a live internet radio show that she does.
Ah, sério? Não
It's just crazy like that. But, so
sabia.
yeah, like, I'm like, wow, you know, what are you talking
Mas
about?
então, isso que você falou, que nem isso, porque vocês conversam de assuntos que não são assuntos assim para atingir ninguém, para ofender ninguém, nem nada, e ainda assim vem gente simplesmente tacar veneno, né? Agora, assim, no meu caso, eu já sou mais ousada, então eu entendo que as pessoas, elas realmente ficam ofendidas com as coisas que eu falo e tudo mais, né? E aí, em contrapartida, veio bem pessoas, ontem mesmo eu recebi um comentário de um rapaz novo, um jovem, que mandou para mim e falou assim: o meu único medo é que os haters consigam calar você, porque o seu conteúdo e o que você fala é muito bom, e eu não quero que você pare. Ele falou desse jeito. E essas coisas vão me dando força, sabe? Força de tipo assim, gente, se eu falo para vocês, não se rendam, né, as pessoas, a negatividade das pessoas, não se rendam às pessoas que falam que vocês não podem, não conseguem, porque infelizmente, Roberto, no ambiente de fábrica isso existe, entendeu? Quando a pessoa ela reluz muita luz, quando ela tipo é muito empolgada ou ela é muito sonhadora, né? Ela quer realmente buscar alguma coisa e tentar conquistar e estudar. As pessoas elas começam a não quer ver sua luz, né?
Right. No, 100% agree. And actually, I'm going to tell you something else. Like, I work in schools, and I've worked in a lot of schools, and I'm not going to name names of schools, but I see the same thing from teachers just grabbing kids and just pulling them down, like, constantly. So I think the whole system is like the way they say it, like in the United States, is we have a saying that's like, it's like a bucket full of crabs, and one crab is trying to climb its way out, and the other ones grab up and pull that crab right back down. And I think that that's what is happening. Like, not, it happens in schools, it happens with teachers that are negative to their students. Like, there's no reason to be negative. Like, you can just, like, I've had students who I thought, maybe this isn't the best idea for you. Maybe you're being self-destructive. But then I'll just ask them. It's like, are you sad, and are you having a hard time at home, and what is actually provoking this, hatred you have for school, or hatred you have for me, or hatred you have for your classmates? What's actually going on here? But I'm not the kind of person that's just saying like, this guy's just an idiot, he doesn't know how to study, he should study harder. But that's not useful. You know what I mean? Like, that's not helping him at all. And just saying that this student's not going to do well. No, never. I was always like, hey man, how can I help you? How can I make you a better person? How can I make your stay at this school better? And that's how I always tried to deal with it. And even though some of them were some students, like, it was like, you always have, like, as a teacher, you'll have some students who will like they'll test you, or they'll try to mess with you. And I was like, oh, you're trying to mess with me. That's cool. What else you got? Let's hear it. And they'd have fun with me. But I noticed that as you're saying, in the factories, in your jobs, that some of the times the people that are closest to you are the people that are going to be the most negative about you trying to pull yourself out and do something better, because what it shows them is that they are too weak to do it themselves. And I think they don't want to look at that. They don't want to see somebody doing something because it's like, oh man, he does that. That's just, it's not useful. It's not going to help me. And they just talk themselves out of doing anything positive for the world. And it's a shame, because I really feel like a lot of people would benefit so much from just some positivity, like from these other people that are being negative. And like I said, like the haters, people are going to hate, but it's like, why even spend the energy? I absolutely don't understand it at all.
Exactly.
Well, I don't agree with that, but I just keep it to myself. Like, one of the things like my mom told me, and we always say, is if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. But I guess the world doesn't really work that way. So
eu carrego a filosofia de que, tipo assim, já tem gente demais criticando no mundo. Então, eu não preciso ser mais uma dessas, entendeu? Então, toda vez que alguém vem falar para mim alguma coisa, algum sonho, uma vontade, não me importa se é possível ou impossível. Eu vou sempre incentivar, né, impulsionar aquela pessoa a correr atrás. Não existe nada no mundo que seja impossível, Roberto, né? Tá, voar é impossível, ok, mas assim...
Well, no, but you said flying is impossible. But I would say, have you seen those guys that like jump off the cliff with those suits? That are like...
aquelas roupas, né?
I mean...
então...
Right? I mean, that I'm just saying, like, that's not like perfectly...
mas é um tipo de voar, né?
Right? So even there, I mean, forever, like in the 90s, if I'd have saw some guy, he was like out with one of those, and he's like going to jump off a cliff and like fly like a bird across the sky, I was like, you're crazy, you're going to die for sure. But somebody just put that stuff on and jumped off and did it. So like the point of the matter is, every single thing that is an advancement in society, advancement in life, advancement in humanity, is somebody had the guts to just try it.
Exactly.
Like, I have a hard, I don't like Amazon for what it is, but like, I have to say, you can't really say that much. The guy started Amazon in his garage, right? Like selling used books. That's what he started out with, and then he built it into the biggest company the world has ever seen. It's not like he was handed like millions of dollars to do it. He was having a hard time. I don't know if I like him now, but I'm saying, like, if you don't like him, just go and do your own thing. You know what I mean? Like,
exatamente. É exatamente isso daí. Bom, a primeira questão é: o ser humano está aí para provar que o impossível não existe, e se existe, prove você que não é impossível, né? Exatamente isso. E outra coisa também, isso aí que você falou, se você, né, tipo, não gosta ou critica, então vai lá e faz, não adianta você falar alguma coisa se você não está fazendo nada, né? Exatamente isso.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that it seems like you are what we would call in English an autodidact. in what you learned. As you were saying before,
Autodidata, né?
right? So you're an autodidact. I am also like an autodidact. Everything I've learned, I don't even. Here's something that's interesting. I'm a teacher, and usually teachers are like, I went to this university and I have this document, and this is why I'm a teacher. And on mine, it's like, oh, I threw my diploma away. I don't claim to have any study. Either I can produce something of value for you and you should pay me for it, or I can't. And I'm not going to hide behind a diploma or anything like that. And I actually say, I have my professors, I still talk to them. There's still some of them, I learned some great things from some of my professors, but most of what I've learned has been after the fact. Like most of the things I've learned about being a teacher have been after the fact, and I've learned it through podcast, through YouTube. I actually, as you were saying, it's interesting. When I go to YouTube, I get audiobooks, and I put the audiobook from YouTube, and sometimes they're 5 hours long, and then I double the speed, and I get through it in like 3 hours, you know, or 2.5 hours. I'll just be listening to an audiobook on double speed, and that is how I learn most of the stuff I've learned. Is, you know, I don't read very well. I'm dyslexic. That's another thing that's interesting. I'm a teacher, but I'm dyslexic. People would say, oh, how do you propose to be a teacher if you're dyslexic? Well, aren't you going to spell everything wrong on the board? And here's the thing. Yes, I spell a lot of things wrong, but I tell my students before I start, I say, I'm dyslexic, so if the spelling looks weird, it's probably wrong. So correct me if you see anything. And when they do, I don't get offended. I don't go, oh my gosh, you know, and they say, oh, teacher, you spelled it wrong. I say, oh yeah, you're right. Let's see, how is it actually spelled? Okay, did I write a D or a B? And they're like, it's a D, teacher. Can you not understand that? It's like, no, I can't. That's the point. Like, I cannot, a D and a B look the same to me. It's a complete crapshoot every time. You understand the word crapshoot? It's like just rolling dice. I don't. It's 100% like I can kind of do it. I practice a lot, but it is actually really hard. So yeah, believe it or not.
Isso em português você está falando? Ou no próprio inglês?
English, man. English.
No inglês?
English,
Sério?
Japanese, dog. I've written bog more times on the board.
Sério?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, que interessante.
Yeah, and it's really bad with B and D. B and D, I don't know which is going to come out of my hand every time I write it on the board. It's always just like I will sit there and I will stop on the D and the B, and I will be like pausing, and teach it, and the students will be like, "What's the matter?" And I was like, "Oh," and they're like, and they'll be like, "Oh, bog," and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then I over and,
É o outro.
it's nice work. You got it. I was testing you. I just told I just tell them from the beginning now. I just say, look, man, I'm dyslexic, and what comes out on my writing on the chalkboard is going to be strange. So yeah, when I type though, it works out okay. Yeah, typing is different, but when I handwrite things, for some reason, it just doesn't go in.
Mas o interessante é que você não se deixou, né, afetar por isso, ou não fazer não ensinar só por causa disso, né?
Right, and that's the thing. It's like when I was in high school, believe it or not, my teachers, and this is the crazy thing, is they told me, don't study other languages. It will just confuse you. Yeah, and right now I speak 5 languages fluently, and if I add in Italian, that's 6, which I studied this year, and I'm studying Russian now. So
Wow.
yeah, and I studied Chinese, and I've studied Mongolian, and I've studied Korean. So like I've studied a lot of languages. It hasn't really made me stupid. You know, it's done the exact opposite, and it's been what I enjoy the most. So this is my big advice to everybody: is whatever you enjoy the most, go study the heck out of that. Be the best at that. You know, make that the thing that makes you famous in the world. That you can, you know, use, not even just to be famous, but just so that you can provide some kind of value with what you really love. You know, that's basically how I you know, lived my life. And a lot of times I noticed that, you know, some of the students in high school, especially Brazilian high school, they would be so sad because high school was about over and they had no idea what they were going to do. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He was like, well, I kind of want to work in the bar. And I was like, oh, you want to work in a bar? Great. But my mom and
Just
dad,
go.
my mom and dad said that's not a real job. I said, well, do you like it? Yeah, I kind of want to do it. Well, then do it. You know, because who cares what your mom and dad say? I'm sorry, but like moms and dads are gonna hate me for that, but like it's not your life.
Mas, exatamente, mas na verdade o maior cancelamento individual, cancelamento do indivíduo começa dentro de casa.
Yeah,
né?
yeah, totally.
Os próprios pais que eles acabam impedindo os filhos de crescer ou de se desenvolver, porque eles querem impor o que eles acreditam, o que eles querem, né, para os filhos. E eu sei que, na verdade, aquilo que a gente falou, são as pessoas próximas que nos querem bem, mas que, no fundo, elas estão podando somente a gente, né?
Yeah. That I find that happens probably for most people that I know. They're in some situation like that, and somebody in their family has said, you know, you're never going to amount to anything, and then they believe it, and then they don't, you know, and it's such a tragedy. But it, like, I remember when my parents, like, again, one of the other things that was interesting, my mother said to me when I was in my last year of high school, she told me, I'm not paying for you to go to college. And like, that was like, I was so angry at her. I was so mad. I just like, oh my gosh. And all my friends were like talking about where they were going to go to college and what they were going to do with it and all this other stuff. And I was like, wow, my mom just like did the meanest thing ever. She just said she wasn't going to pay for my college. But what ended up happening is I got a part-time job. I studied and I got into college and I studied and I worked. I worked a full-time job and I went to college and I was learning. And yeah, I got done without any debt. You know, my parents didn't have to put any debt on me. I didn't have to feel like I owe them anything. You know, so I think in the long haul, I'm like, I was really actually happy that my mom didn't you know, try to put me through college or try to pay for my college. And I think that was the, you know, and even now I don't use that diploma. It's like the last couple jobs I've gotten, it's been people have come to me and said, hey, will you teach me English? Hey, will you teach at our school? Hey, will you come there? And I just go, yeah, I was asked if I would come and do this, and they asked me to do it, and then I do it. But I actually hope that most people, I hope that parents would realize that the education system that we all went through, that they told us was going to be this, you know, the way to a better life, that's not the way anymore. There's a better way, and it's just becoming completely educated on your own. If you really want to go to college, there's free college online. You know, but you have to learn to speak English. Well, that's a caveat. You know, that's one thing. You have to learn to speak English. But once you do, there's free English college online, and a lot of people in the world are taking advantage of it, you know, and they're getting a great education for nothing. I mean, that's great, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's like, no, nobody's going to accept that. It's like, no, everybody's going to accept it, because either you can do the job that you're asked to do, or you can't. And it's as simple as that.
Exatamente.
So, yeah.
O problema das pessoas, acho que é acreditar demais que o diploma vai garantir alguma coisa para elas e não se preocuparem mais em qualificar-se ou então, né, em aprender ou diminuir o nível delas para, né, começar de baixo e ir aprendendo, né?
Yeah, and that's another thing, is people are just afraid to start from nothing. It is very scary, though.
Exatamente.
I think it is very scary for a lot of people, and for me, it's not, because again, I am bold, as we were saying before. I'm attractive. I don't even know that's an English word, but I like to say it is an English word. This is another thing that happens to me. It's kind of strange, because I speak so many languages, and I'm not trying to brag about this. It's actually a problem. Is I will say words in English or in Portuguese or in Spanish that make sense to me and should make sense in those languages. And the crazy thing is most people understand it. Like there was one that was saying, oh yeah, so there's the word in Portuguese is incomodar, right? right? And I said in English, I said, incommodate to my friend lives in Utah, United States. And I said, I don't mean to incommodate you. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't think that's a word in English. And she's like, no, I understand what you mean. You don't want to make trouble for me. I was like, yeah, so how did you know that? So, that was the crazy thing. It's like, how
Não
did you...
existe essa palavra em inglês?
No, I mean, you usually say like, I don't want to bother you, right?
I don't bother you, right?
Yeah.
Uhum.
Yeah, or
Mas não existe incommodate, tipo, não existe essa palavra.
like
Or
that,
tipo, vocês não
not in
usam.
that way, not in that way. Yeah, so it would be like inconvenience, but that's not the same thing, right? Right, because we have conveniência in Portuguese, right? And desculpa por la inconveniência. Again, like it's inconvenience, right? So
Conveniência.
inconvenience, yeah. So but I don't know if you can say inconveniência in Portuguese, but people would understand it if I said that, right? So that's the interesting thing about languages. And I remember that when I was studying Portuguese and from Spanish, there's so many words that are similar, but they don't actually exist in Spanish. But like when the Portuguese speaker said it, I just knew what it meant. It's kind of the strangest thing about learning languages that way. But I was this year I studied Italian for one full year, and I actually have to go do my Italian homework before the evening, because I religiously study every day Italian and Russian this year. That's the goal. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Parabéns.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we are about the hour mark, so I just wanted to say on my side, I'd love to have you back on Kicking Ideas and make this kind of a more regular thing. If you have the time, the door is always open, and anytime you want me to talk on your channel, of course, I'm always free to try to talk, and they can hear me speak in Portuguese, because some people are like, oh, please speak in Portuguese, please speak in Portuguese. It's like, I'll try, but I'm not that great at it. I mean, I think I understand it well, but I
É
don't.
mentira dele, ele é ótimo, sim. Ele é super fluente, ele fala muito bem.
To say again, I really cheated to get it, because I just got the job, and then I had to. I had to. You have no idea how scary it was. The first day I went in to do like parent teacher days, like the parents were coming in to like go and do the class, and this is like, I've been teaching the class for like 2 months, and then it was Parents' Day, and I was so scared, because like all these parents are going to come in, and I had to go and present like oh my gosh. But I got through it, and the parents were nice to me. The parents were nice to me. I gotta say, they were the coolest parents ever, and everybody was worried. Everybody was super worried. But when they went into the 5th grade, they all had great study habits. They all really loved learning, and I think that went through to the end too. As they were graduating, all of the ones that I had taught graduated pretty much in the same year, and it was really good. So not a lot of them were held back, but it was interesting. Yeah. So.
Mas isso é sensacional. É isso que falta nas pessoas, essa força de vontade. Tipo assim, apareceu um desafio, não se deixar, né? Não desistir, mas assim, ir pra luta, né?
No, it's like this idea is like, I guess this works better for Mexicans and Americans, because I say I'm an American, not an Americant. If you're a Mexican, you're not a Mexicant. It's like that. You understand that play on the words, because at the end of the word American is can, it means that they can.
Só funciona em inglês e só para americanos e mexicanos.
Right. I think there might be another country in there, but yeah, it's like, I remember watching Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and I think Johnny Depp says to the Mexican guy, he says, are you a Mexican or a Mexicant? And the Mexican goes, can. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'm an American. So it's like,
I am a Brazilian can.
That's right, you're a Brazilian can. That's right. That's great. I'm so happy that you made time to talk to me this evening. It's wonderful, and hopefully we can talk again sometime. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug at the end of this conversation?
Não, foi um prazer, super adorei. Eu quero muito, né? Vamos trazer outros temas, né? Quem sabe a gente não consegue trazer mais temas e fazer mais vezes, mas vai pro YouTube, né? Just give it a try.
This is going on YouTube for sure. This is like my first YouTube video that's going to be up there.
Por favor, vamos abrir aqui,
It's going,
né?
it's
E eu tenho
going there.
certeza que vai ser um sucesso. Meu, você já é um cara, né, batalhador, consistente, só persista, que eu tenho certeza que isso daqui vai agregar muito na vida das pessoas. E aqui também, isso daqui mostra uma coisa que o prazer não importa a realidade, somos todos seres humanos, independente de ser, né, americano, japonês, brasileira, o que quer que seja, qualquer que seja a nacionalidade. Quando você aprende uma língua, olha a barreira que você derruba. Né?
Yeah.
Exatamente.
It really
Olha
does.
isso.
It opens up your whole world. I just can't get enough of this. My whole life has been beautiful because I have learned every language that has been around me, because you just meet so many different people and you get so many different points of view. You get such a diversity of thought. Like I don't care anything about like diversity of like what color somebody's skin is, how much melanin in their skin. That means nothing to me. But what really is the most interesting is like the diversity of culture and the diversity of thought that comes from learning all the different languages. I think that a lot of people, if they're a monolingual person, man, do they suffer. Life is so like just this. It's just this one thing, and like there's just so much more out there. So yeah.
Exatamente. Então, sempre quando eu falo assim para as pessoas, aprenda japonês, não é somente para, né, porque eu sei o japonês, mas principalmente para você entender o outro lado da pessoa, para você quebrar essa crença de que, quando você não sabe, quando você não obtém o conhecimento, você fica refém do que os outros te falam, do que os outros te passam. Você não tem sua própria experiência, você não tem essa oportunidade de conversar com a pessoa, né, e de se expressar, de ser dono da sua própria voz, sabe? Então, assim, esse trabalho é incrível que você está trazendo. Dá para trazer muito mais pessoas, né, também, né, de japoneses também, outras culturas, outras nacionalidades também, para fazer esse mix, para mostrar que somos todos seres humanos, temos as mesmas ideias, os mesmos sentimentos, né?
Yeah, I think it's just such a wonderful thing, and here's the last thing I want to know is, how can Kicking Ideas followers find you? What's your channel called? What are you? Where are you at?
Meu canal no YouTube é Michiko Hoshi, meu nome mesmo,
Okay.
E o Instagram é @Hoshimichiko, o contrário.
Okay. I see. Okay.
Tá bom,
so
pessoal?
Michiko on Instagram and Michiko Hoshi on YouTube. That's really simple. You can find I've got lots of stuff. I've got so many pages on Facebook that I'm doing. I'm doing Japanese with Rob, English with Rob. I'm doing scientific learning. I'm doing my mountain biking thing, which is where I put all my effort right now, is in mountain biking. So yeah, Kicking Ideas is the one I want to grow the most this year as well. This one and the mountain biking, I want to grow them both together. So hopefully we can be, help each other grow our channels, and I'm going to definitely do the YouTube. I've got it all set up. This is going into the feed. It'll be my first YouTube video. So yeah, thank you very much.
Roberto, desejo todo o sucesso do mundo para você. Parabéns. Nossa, que você continue fazendo mais e mais esses trabalhos, inspirando pessoas, né? E compartilhando mais esses conhecimentos. Você é uma pessoa extremamente inteligente, esforçado. Meu, super maravilhada com esse papo, com essa conversa. Foi uma honra conversar com você.
No, the honor is 100% mine. I'm so happy that you. I was like, oh man, do I even dare like ask her? She's so much more popular than I am, so I better, it's like, oh. So yeah. So thank you very much. We'll be in touch, and I can't wait to talk again.
Com certeza.
Bye bye.
Beijo.